People, hello, how are we? Hopefully we're all doing well. I'm Tom. This weekend we saw a huge upset as Tim Tszyu got absolutely demolished by Bertram Matazliev. And look, of course boxing is full of upsets, but it just got me thinking, what are boxing's biggest upsets? You got the obvious ones to throw in, but I think there are a few upsets that are perhaps lesser known or at least not looked at as much. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, when we say upsets that not many people talk about, the first thing I thought about was Lennox Lewis getting stopped by Hasim Rahman. Now, this is an upset that, of course, as a British boxing fan, I'm quite aware of. But I don't think many people talk about it and the fact that it actually was an upset. Lennox Lewis was a favourite going into that fight. And Hasim Rahman getting a knockout, knocking him out at the time was a huge upset. Nobody saw that coming. And of course, look, Lennox Lewis went on to avenge this, as we sort of thought he would. But look, it was an upset defeat, and it was a great win for Hasim Rahman, one that's definitely gone down in history. But like I say, as a British boxing fan, Lennox Lewis was not supposed to lose that fight, but he did. And no one, in terms of the boxing industry, no one really talks about it. I'd say that's probably a similar level to the Dubois knocking out AJ. No one really thought that was going to happen. No one really expected it. And if AJ goes in there and knocks out Dubois, it will be a repeat of what happened with obviously Hasim Rahman and Lennox Lewis. But that was a big upset at the time. Talking of Anthony Joshua, how could I not mention, it'd be silly of me not to mention Anthony Joshua's loss to Andy Ruiz. Anthony Joshua was due to make his American debut at Madison Square Garden against big baby Jarrell Miller. But things took a bit of a turn when Jarrell Miller tested positive for banned substances just before the fight. I think it was like a week out from the fight, maybe even less. And then Eddie Hearn was getting messages from a lot of fighters, I'd imagine. One of them was named Andy Ruiz Jr. and he was a fighter that actually, as we've gone on to see, has got some decent skills. Not world-beating, but decent skills. But at the time, he was the fat kid on the block that nobody expected, and I mean nobody expected, to beat Anthony Joshua. So he got set as a replacement very late on. He just had a fight. He was active. He was ready. He was prepared. And he goes in there against Anthony Joshua and he causes a huge upset. It seemed like business as usual as Anthony Joshua goes in there and puts Andy Ruiz down in the third round. Seems like a success. Seems like the American debut going as planned. But that turned out to be the beginning of the end for Anthony Joshua, not Andy Ruiz. As Andy Ruiz went on, the late replacement went on to knock Anthony Joshua down a number of times on the way to stopping him, and panic set in, no doubt about it, as Andy Ruiz stopped Anthony Joshua in the 7th round. Anthony Joshua wasn't knocked clean out. It was a ref stoppage, but make no mistake, it was a astronomical upset as the American debut for Anthony Joshua didn't go as planned. A TKO defeat to Andy Ruiz. He would go on to avenge it in the rematch, as we saw. A bit of controversy surrounding that, as everyone deemed it a boring fight. An even fatter Andy Ruiz came in, but that's not AJ's fault. AJ can only beat who's put in front of him, and ultimately he did that. It ended up being, he won every single round really, but stopping Anthony Joshua in round 7 has gone down as one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. Another big upset that you might not even be aware of is George Foreman versus Muhammad Ali. Now, of course, we know how good Muhammad Ali is. Widely considered by many boxers and boxing fans alike that he was the greatest of all time. So that's perhaps why this upset gets overlooked. When you think George Foreman, Muhammad Ali, who was better? Most people say Muhammad Ali. Most people say Muhammad Ali is the GOAT. But actually, big George Foreman did fight Muhammad Ali. The Rumble in the Jungle, it took place in Africa, and big George Foreman threw the kitchen sink at Muhammad Ali. He went in as a fairly sizable favourite. And like I said, he threw the kitchen sink at Ali. But Muhammad Ali actually said in George Foreman's ear, "Is that all you've got?" And then proceeded to knock him out in the 8th round. And that was a big upset. George Foreman was bigger than him, heavier than him, longer reach than him, hit harder than him. He went in as the favourite in the Rumble in the Jungle. And Ali knocked him out. That was an upset, quite a big upset at the time at that. Not many people, if anyone, thought Muhammad Ali would win that. And he did, and that's largely what has gone down to cement his legacy as the greatest of all time in boxing. And of course, the big one, the one that everyone thinks about. If I said to you, boxing upsets, you would think of Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas. Perhaps the biggest upset in boxing history. Mike Tyson went in as a massive favourite, and I mean a monstrous favourite. But Buster Douglas made it hard from him, right from the outset, right from the beginning, with his jab after jab after jab, right down Mike Tyson's throat. And, you know, to be fair to Mike Tyson, look, he went in there, he did what his corner told him to do, and he knocked Buster Douglas down in the 8th round. But Douglas then went on to stop him in the 10th to become the heavyweight champion in what was the biggest upset in boxing history. Certainly the most famous upset in boxing history, as Mike Tyson, 23 years old, took his first defeat. And of course, this perhaps marked the undoing of Mike Tyson, as a lot of things transpired from that fight, and things are in and around that fight. It took place in Japan, and of course we all know what happened there. But that is perhaps the biggest upset in boxing history. And, you know, look at this upset on the weekend, because it was a big upset. It was a huge upset as Tim Tszyu lost, and potentially that's it for Tim Tszyu. Potentially he's done. Potentially that's it. A big loss for Australian boxing, a big loss for him. And I wonder, where does that rank? I think, in terms of boxing upsets that you don't know about, probably fairly high. That will go down as one that won't be remembered that much, won't be remembered that well, but actually was a big, big upset in the world of boxing. And where would I put it on this list? I'd say not as big an upset as Buster Douglas versus George Foreman. Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas, I apologise. And Andy Ruiz versus Anthony Joshua, but perhaps as big as George Foreman and the Lennox Lewis one. I do think they were big upsets. I think this is huge as well. It's one of those people where boxing nowadays, it's in a great position. The landscape of boxing currently, you know, is fantastic. And I've listed all heavyweight boxing fights there. This wasn't one of them, and that's perhaps why this won't go down as a well-remembered one. But boxing's littered with upsets everywhere, and that's what makes the sport so fun, the sport so exciting, is when you see these upsets. When fights don't go as planned, it doesn't always go as you see it going on paper. And that's what's so fantastic about the sport, people. Let me know your thoughts on this video in the comment section down below. Let me know your biggest upsets in boxing. Look forward to reading them. What did I miss? Probably quite a lot. Let me know your thoughts, people. Make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. You know how YouTube works. Peace.